Hi, I'm Teresa and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some queer historical fiction. I just thought this was the perfect way to kick off LGBTQ plus History Month in the UK. So I have mentioned in a couple of my previous videos I really like historical fiction, particularly when it pertains to queer people living in history, especially during the 20th century. So I just thought I'd pick out some of the books that fit this genre that I really like. So the vast majority of these are set in the 20th century. There's only a couple older ones, and these are all just historical fiction. There are no supernatural elements, there's no historical fantasy, though there are many of those titles that I really want to read or that I've really loved. So yes, without further ado, here are some of my queer historical fiction recs in absolutely no particular order. It's a mess, I really should have done them chronologically or something. Oh well, too late now. The first book I'm going to talk about is Music from Another World by Robin Talley. This is one I mentioned in my 2020 favourites video. It is one that I just absolutely adore, and it's one that I read in spring of 2020 and it really got me wanting to read more historical fiction. This is definitely what kind of kicked off my, oh wait, I really want to read more like this kind of feelings. So this story is told through an epistolary format, through diary entries and letters, and we follow two points of view, Tammy and Sharon, and these girls are both living in California in the 70s, and they both come from really religious backgrounds. So first we have Tammy. She's a lesbian. She's very much in the closet because she comes from this like uber religious, incredibly homophobic family, and she's not exactly in a very safe place. And she and Sharon are matched as pen pals, and so we start getting some communication between them, and we meet Sharon. And so Sharon is living in San Francisco, and she's dealing with the fact that her brother has recently came out as gay, and kind of reconciling that with the environment that she's in, which is not very accepting, and what she's always been told. And we just follow these two girls getting closer, their friendship, it's amazing, their letters, I was a bit worried about this format, but it works so well. The letters, the diary entries, they felt very authentic, they felt real, they were raw, they felt like real. They felt like I was reading real diary entries, real letters from real girls, and it was just incredible. And so with a lot of this book taking place in San Francisco during the 70s, we have got a lot of movements happening. There's a punk movement, we get a lot about that. There's obviously gay rights, there's feminism, there's so much happening, and I just loved being this close to that history through this book. I really enjoyed reading it. Another really key aspect of this book is Harvey Milk. So Harvey Milk was an openly gay politician in California at that time, and he's a real idol for Tammy, and her diary entries are actually just letters to him. Not one she intends on sending, but she just sees him as someone to look up to, someone who understands where she's coming from. And so he plays quite a major role in the book and in these characters' lives as well, even if they don't directly meet. And so you get a bit of history from his political career and such, and it's really interesting. And just overall, I really like this book. I really highly recommend it. I feel like it covers so many of the important aspects of queer history at this time, so many of the important movements, and it doesn't shy away from showing how unpleasant, shall we say, queer life could be at this time, how scary, how dangerous. It doesn't shy away from that, but it's also incredibly hopeful, and I just loved it an awful lot. The next book I want to talk about is also by Robin Talley, and that is Pulp. So I think she's probably more known for Pulp, but this is not a book I've read yet. I will read it soon. I really want to. I'm really looking forward to it. So this follows a dual timeline. You're following a character in the 50s and a character in the present day, and kind of the intertwining of time and all that fun stuff. So in 1955 in Washington DC, you are following a character called Janet, and she is gay. She's trying to keep secret this relationship, this feeling she has for her female best friend at the time, and she discovers lesbian pulp fiction. And she's really just struggling with wanting to read this, to write this, to have her real feelings out in the world and validated almost, I suppose. And you're also following Abby, who is a high school senior living in the present day, and her senior school project is on lesbian pulp fiction. And she's reading this and she becomes really attached to this one author, and she decides to try and figure out who she really was, uncover who she was beneath the pseudonym, and this is how you kind of begin to see this linking of timelines. And of course, as I've said, I've not read it yet, but this just sounds so good. I'm really excited to see how these two timelines weave together. I think it can be really interesting. And I don't know, just this contrast between where we are now and where we were, and the differences and how far we still have to go, really. I feel like it could be just incredibly moving, and also a look into queer life in the 50s, something really interesting to me. Lesbian pulp fiction. I've not picked up any. I struggle with older books, I will not lie, I've said this before, which is why all of the books in this video are more recent, or written more recently, even if they're set in the past. But it's something I'm very interested in and in the history of, so I think I'll get a taste of it in this book. The next book I want to talk about is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. So this is one of the very first queer books I read. It was way back in 2019, and I really want to reread it actually, because I've realised going to film this I can't remember a lot of the book, and I just want to see kind of how I experience it coming from a perspective a couple of years later, having read more queer books, more comfortable in my own identity, all of that. I feel like there's a lot of subtleties that I will pick up on that I didn't before. But yes, this takes place in Old El Paso in the 80s, and you're following the point of view of Ari, and he's quite lonely, he's quite sad, quite angry, he's just not in the best place. He's really thinking about his brother who's in prison, his family situation's not great. But he meets Dante, and Dante is like light and joy, and they just connect instantly, and they form this really amazing friendship. And so you're following them, and this is very character driven. I don't think there's much that actually happens in terms of plot, but following them as characters as their relationship develops. And you're also dealing with Ari's family situation that I've mentioned, some questions of identity, both in terms of sexuality, but also cultural, racial. Because if I remember correctly, they would both be descended from immigrants from South America, Central America, but they both experience this heritage very differently because Ari has much darker skin. He's much more obviously Latino than Dante. And he feels a much stronger connection to his heritage, and there's just a lot of things to do with that in this book, which I feel like I'd appreciate much more with a reread actually as well. So it's just something I'm very excited to pick up again. But this book is just praise for absolutely stunning writing, the stunning exploration of self and of identity and of character, and what it was like growing up in the 80s and queer and trying to figure that out, as well as having all these other questions of identity and other struggles, especially with Ari's situation. And it's just an absolutely gorgeous book. I remember that much at least, and it's one that I very much recommend. I gave it 5 stars when I read it, and I cannot see that changing with a reread. I'm excited to reread it, actually. I feel like this is more what I'm talking about than actually recommending it, but yeah, this was just stunning, and I would definitely recommend it. The next book I want to talk about is another one that's on my TBR and very highly anticipated, and that is Ziggy, Stardust and Me by James Brandon. So this book takes place in 1973, and at this time, there's a lot of bad things happening in the world, and one of them being that homosexuality is still considered illegal. And so you're following the perspective of 16-year-old Jonathan, and he is very alone. He's not very happy. He's got a really difficult home life. He's bullied at school. It's not great. And so to cope, he escapes into his imagination. And a really key part of his imagination is David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. And so Jonathan is gay, and he is undergoing treatment, from what I can tell, conversion therapy treatment. And he just wants to be cured. He wants to be normal because this is as he's been told. And this is until he meets Webb. And Webb is everything Jonathan is not. He is proud of his identity and he's out. And him and Jonathan strike up this kind of friendship, and Webb just really sees him for who he is. And through their relationship and through Webb's influence, Jonathan begins a path of self-acceptance, really. This is one that I've also not read, but and so I can't talk about it in too much detail, but it's so high on my TBR. I'm really excited by this David Bowie influence. That's gonna be so cool to read. I don't know how much of a huge role it plays, but I'm very, very intrigued. I'm just really excited by this path of self-acceptance that it sounds like Jonathan's going to go on, because that is something I really, really love reading about. I love the theme of acceptance in queer books. I think it's just so interesting to read, and I'm just very, very excited to pick this one up. I think that this one would also be very good for music lovers, a bit like Music from Another World, just that had such a punk influence, and now you've got the Bowie influence, and I'm loving this intersection of queer books and queer music. But yes, this one I'm so eager to read, and I'd already recommend it just based on the synopsis. It sounds so, so good. The next book I want to recommend is another 2020 favourite, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is one of the more popular books in this video. There are a couple that are just incredibly well known, and this is definitely one of them, but how could I not include it, okay? And so this book begins in the present with the aging starlet Evelyn Hugo contacting Monique Grant and asking her to interview her and to write a biography on Evelyn's life. And so you follow their meetings, but mostly you follow Evelyn's story, which is what does take place in the past. So this begins in the 1950s as she makes her way to Hollywood, and you kind of go until about the 80s when she leaves Hollywood. So you are covering a good few decades, and it's really, really interesting seeing so much of what was happening at this time, this kind of golden age of Hollywood, and also what it was like to be queer at that time. And there's just so much happening, so much going on. It's so good. And so the story's kind of divided into these sections, categorized by who Evelyn was married to at the time, her 7 husbands. And in among these 7 husbands, she also has a female love interest, which is why this is on this list. This is why it's queer, because Evelyn is bisexual. And through her and through some other characters, you really do get this sense of what it was like being queer in Hollywood at the time, and just in general at the time, but especially in their case where they are just so in the spotlight. And you've got this kind of old Hollywood glamour and nostalgia, but gritty and real and not hiding how horrible it could be at times. And it's just this perfect blend and mix of the good and the bad. And it's something I really, really enjoyed reading. This is also one of the books that has most efficiently emotionally wrecked me. Whew. There were some feelings, there was a lot of tears, but I could not recommend it more. It is so damn good. The next book I've got on this list is We Are Lost and Found by Helen Dunbar. This is another one I've not yet read, but another one that I'm very, very excited to. So this follows 3 friends coming of age in the 1980s. So this follows a teenager called Michael, and he's very content to live in the shadow of his best friends. His brother's recently been kicked out of the house for being gay, and he needs to lay low to avoid the same fate. And to pass time before he graduates, he hangs out at the Echo. And here he can dance and just forget about the looming threat of AIDS, of getting kicked out, of all his worries and troubles. But there he meets Gabriel, and Gabriel sees James for James, and James has to start considering whether it's worth being himself and allowing himself to be seen, or if it's safer and better for him to just continue hiding. And so once again, we've got this 80s setting, we've got a bit of music and dance and queer culture and community forming part of the kind of backbone of this novel, and this path for acceptance and struggles with acceptance. I think this is a very, very big theme, especially in books set during this time period, and I'm just so intrigued by it. I really, really want to read it. I also don't know what to say about this and some of the other ones I've not yet read, because obviously I've not read them, but this honestly just seems so, so, so good to me. I know it'll maybe be a little bit painful going by something in the synopsis, but just this kind of finding community and finding yourself and acceptance and all this good stuff. It just sounds so good, and I'm really, really excited to read it. The next book I want to talk about is The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily M. Danforth. So this is also set in the 80s, and you follow a main character called Cameron Post. And I've also not yet read this one, but it is so high on my TBR, and so from my understanding, obviously I've not read it, but the book opens with Cameron Post's parents dying, and her first thought was just relief, because that means that they will not know that just hours before she had been kissing a girl. And so she's shipped off kind of to live with her aunt, who is very, very conservative, and when she discovers that Cameron isn't straight, starts her in conversion therapy. But she's also developing a relationship with another girl and just, again, finding herself. Is it worth being herself in such a scary, scary world? And I am intimidated by this one because it is well loved. It is a classic in the kind of sapphic or even queer YA genre, and I really want to love it as well. It deals with obviously the hard-hitting theme of conversion therapy, though I have been told that it's not the huge main focus, big part of the book, which I'd kind of been led to believe, so you do get some of the nice cutesy romance scenes and just being a teen at this time in the 80s and in, I believe, the American South. And yeah, I'm just so excited to pick this one up. I think it's going to be really, really great, really, really hard-hitting, but very, very, very good as well. The next book I want to talk about is Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazmian. So this, can we admire the brightness of this cover? Okay, now, so this also takes place in the 80s. It is set in 1999 in New York City, and you are following three friends. So one of the characters you're following is Reza, an Iranian boy who's just moved to the city, and he is gay and in the closet and just terrified that anyone will find out. All he knows of gay life really is just AIDS and the absolute horrors it brings. And when he starts at his new school, he meets this girl called Judy, and they end up striking up a relationship together. But this is a bit complicated when Reza and Art, Judy's best friend and their school's only out and proud student, start falling for each other. And so you've got a bit of this love triangle and friendship drama set against the backdrop of New York City 1989, and AIDS plays quite a huge role in this. Art is documenting the epidemic through his photographs. Judy's uncle is an activist. It sounds like it's going to play a really huge role in the book, and I'm just so intrigued by these friendship dynamics. I think that's going to be so interesting to read. A bit of romance, and I am just very, very, very excited to pick this one up as well. A few of these books I've mentioned deal with AIDS, or AIDS is almost in the background because it was just such a significant part of queer life in this time, and I'm so just intrigued to read more about it. It's definitely something I want to know more about and maybe even pick up some non-fiction about. But for now, I'm just excited to pick this one up. The next book I want to talk about is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. So this is the first in a series of, I believe, kind of standalone novels, you know, set in the same world or whatever, following FF romances in the Regency era, so we're on to the older books now. So this follows two women, Lucy and Catherine. And Catherine is a countess, and she's looking to find someone to finish her late husband's work and translate a really complicated French text. And so when Lucy finds a letter asking for someone to do this, she shows up at the Countess's home to ask for the job. And so she spends her days translating this text and her nights developing a relationship with Catherine. And I'm just so excited to read this. I really wanted to read some, like, just romance. I'm in such a mood for romance. I might pick this up soon, to be honest. Anyway, this book just has so many things that appeal to me, like this French translation. Like, what am I studying? French. I could be doing this. I could be falling in love with a countess while I translate some French astronomy shite for her. It'd be amazing. I'm so eager to pick it up and to pick up some historical romance in general. I feel like it's such a huge genre. There's so many books in it, and I would like to read some of them, really. Especially since it's sapphic, because we all know I love sapphics. I just think it's going to be really great. It's such a fun, light-hearted time. I know that it's very well loved, so I'm even more excited to read it. Next, I want to talk about the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is again one of the very well-known books here, but how could I not include it? This is also the one that most toes the line between being completely without magic and perhaps not, because this takes place in ancient Greece and follows myth and such, and as such you have got some mythological figures. But I think that you're going to struggle to find anything set in ancient Greece that does not have some kind of magical otherworldly element, because you've got this mythology. So it's in this video. This follows the story of Achilles and of Patroclus and their friendship and then their romance and just their lives, and I love this book so much. I also read this one first a couple of years ago and I'm kind of forgetting about it, but so moving, so good. I really loved reading it. You follow them from quite a young age, growing up, all the way until the war in Troy, and just as their relationship develops over this time, and you've got the interference of Achilles' mother, and oh, it's so good, such an enjoyable read, and there's just such a connection with these characters, and it's incredible. And I love that Madeline Miller is a historian, and you can really tell when you read this, there's so much detail, like not info dumping detail, like good detail, and you know it's historically accurate, and oh, it's so damn good, so powerful, so moving. I just loved it an awful lot. And actually seeing Achilles and Patroclus as lovers, when obviously that has been largely ignored in the many stories of Achilles that you will see in film and in TV and in book more recently. I just love that you've got one that actually writes them as they were, as lovers. And then finally, just very quickly, I want to talk about a couple of 2021 releases that are queer historical fiction. I'm not going to go into any detail at all in these, but if you are interested in them, I talk about them in my 2021 Sapphic releases video, and I will link it down below. First, we've got Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, which just very recently came out. This takes place in San Francisco in the 50s, and you follow the lesbian bar scene, and you're following a Chinese American main character and her kind of dealing a bit with the Red Scare at this time, and it all just sounds very good. I'm very excited to read it. If you're considering reading it, I am hosting a read-along for this book as well as Melinda Lowe's other books, which I'll leave information about down below. We'll be reading it in March, I believe, so if you can hold on for a month or two, it'd be really great to read it with you. Next up is Of Trust and Heart by Charlotte Ann Hamilton. This is another one I am so beyond excited for. This is a historical fiction, obviously, and it takes place in the 1920s in Scotland. And you're following an heiress, and she gets involved in speakeasy culture and meets a girl there, and it's a new adult romance, and I'm just very excited to pick it up. So many aspects of this book appeal to me. Okay, as a Scottish lesbian, reading about a Scottish lesbian, sold. Scottish historical fiction written by a Scot, sold. I'm just very excited to pick this one up. And finally, just as a little bonus, One Last Stop by Casey McKiston. This does take place in the present. However, your love interest, Jane, has been displaced from the 1970s, and a very large part of this book is to do with her kind of going through her memories, regaining her memories of her life, really. And through her, you learn a lot about, you see a lot of queer life in the 70s and her life before she got stuck on a train and has ended up there in the present. But there's such a focus on queer community and just so much important things, and I couldn't not include this, A, because I'm obsessed with it, and B, because the queer community and queer history is just such a big part of this book, such a significant part, and I loved it an awful lot for that, and just for everything else about it, really. If you do want to know more about this, I will link my reviews of it. I've got both written and video, and they're both spoiler free. And yes, that is the end of the video. I hope that you've enjoyed, maybe find a book you want to pick up. I'm so sorry that I've not read a lot of these and can't talk about them as much as I would like, but hopefully just giving the synopsis and a little bit of my excitement is enough to encourage you to pick them up as well. It's definitely got me excited to pick them up, even more so than I already was. If you have enjoyed, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like, a comment, subscribe if you haven't. It really helps out. And there will be links to all of these books down below in the description, as well as my social media. I definitely recommend you check those out if you want to keep up with me. I've got some more bookish content over there, you don't want to miss it. And just thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll see you in another video soon.